Somebody really wants to do it.
I mean, I can do it, I just don't know who feels comfortable. You can do it.
I'll do it. I'll do a quick, I have a quick one.
God is great, Scott is good.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of that way.
Simple.
Okay. We call to order the meeting of the city council for September 10th. And it's 7:05. So, Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Yes.
Or actually, no.
Okay.
We call to order, I'm gonna do the invocation. I jumped ahead.
That's okay.
For those who wish to participate, you can stand. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of life and the opportunities you give us to serve you and to serve others. Help us to act with character and conviction. We ask that your wisdom and grace will guide us. We pray these things in your name. Amen. And please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the United States, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Madam Clerk, you can call the roll for us.
Mr. Leeton?
Here.
Mr. Owen?
Here.
Mr. Graves?
Here.
Mr. Eckert?
Here.
Mrs. Hughes? Mayor Ellis? President Owen, we do have a quorum present.
All right, thank you. Approval of the agenda, we have 2 items we're going to remove at the request of the applicant. Item 4 on the consent agenda, we're going to delete. And then I'm requesting informal actions, item 5 be deleted, as we do not have a representative for the city to speak on that.
Anything else?
That's it.
Move to approve the agenda as revised.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we have citizens' participation. I'm going to call Mr. Frank Jenkins. No, he's doing it meeting last time.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the City Council. I'm speaking as city attorney for the city. At the last meeting, we had a discussion regarding what information relating to employees working off-site was requested by President Owen. At that meeting, I made some statements which I want to apologize for and acknowledge to President Owen. The issue arose when I responded to a question of Mr. Steve Boswell relating to what information was requested by President Owen in that process. I stated that the information that he requested, among other things, was information as to where employees lived who were working off-site. He never made that statement. I went back on the record to acknowledge that today, and I do apologize for that mistake. Earlier today, I had reason to contact all the governing body members about the same subject matter, and at that time I misstated what also Councilman or President Owen requested. I stated that he requested employee names and addresses. He never made such a request. Later this morning, President Owen contacted me, made me aware of the mistake that I made, and for the record, I want to state exactly what he did request. This was one of his emails. Would you please send to me a list of the title, position names of city employees that are working from home? Please include the date of each position started working from home. What is the duration of the working from home status assigned to each position? Again, he did not state, he did not request where the employees lived. He did not request their names or addresses. I sincerely apologize to the President, and I assure you that's not going to happen again.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jenkins. I do think there's a couple things that probably me and you need to get together someday in these weeks and talk about and discuss. Thank you. The next one up is Stephen Boswell.
Hi, Steve Boswell, 504 Jackson, Spring Hill, or North Jackson, Spring Hill, Kansas. So basically, kind of what I gathered from that is that basically that was information that just about anybody could get, correct, Mr. Jenkins?
The information that he requested?
Yes. Freedom of Information Act?
No, I can't say that.
Emphatically, you cannot say that, but okay. Anyway, just still don't see the cause for such a large bill for such a minor question. Second thing I'd like to discuss is unfortunately unable to because the CD administrator's not here. And that was just checking up on the progress for right across the street. And the resident right across the street has told me that his targeted plan has been to take care of the issue by the end of this month, which I wanted to say thank you to the to Mr. Hendershot for that. Anyway, furthermore, my third item was also for follow-up, and that was, Mr. Hendershot was directed by the council to go over and make sure that the city properties were properly maintained and et cetera and so on. And well, unfortunately, I just stopped by a simple one property, and that would be by the ball fields, where they have the headquarters for their, equipment and stuff like that. And unfortunately, they still have not taken care of their issues. And furthermore, I went ahead and looked into the pool, and lo and behold, it's half full of water. And the old pool, obviously, which is obviously a breeding ground for pests and dangerous bugs like mosquitoes that can carry viruses and disease. So I'm very disappointed about that. And on that note, I've also kind of been looking at the properties in the city, and it seems like the focus has been put more on the citizens versus the business owners or the businesses of the city. There's a lot of businesses, including Mayor Ellis's business, that have weeds overgrown, a fence falling down, etc., and so on. And, as far as I've been able to tell, and I've collaborated, I've talked with the mayor of Overland Park, and how things like that go, and to his knowledge, it goes more of they are very stringent on the businesses to make sure that the businesses keep up a proper appearance, and they are not in violation. Unfortunately, and then followed, obviously the city is number one. The city is always the prime example.
Right.
And then followed businesses, and then after businesses, they try to pretty much leave the citizens alone unless there's a major issue. And I'm not saying I haven't had a major issue, but it has been taken care of a long time ago. But anyway, now I get complaints from other neighbors that are complaining that they're being harassed about vehicles and owning too many cars, i.e. a neighbor of mine, he didn't give me authorization to say his name,
Right.
but he got a letter from the city involving the fact that he has 5 cars and 2 licensed drivers. Now that is definitely an ordinance in Overland Park that you cannot have more than 2 cars per licensed driver. I haven't been able to find it in the city of Spring Hill codes yet, but I'm sure it exists there somewhere, as the codes are very difficult and hard to navigate sometimes. I just implore that this city council would really consider starting to take a hard and very serious look at common sense codes. You know, the basics. Let's get the city in order first. Let's get these businesses looking nice. I mean, I love the way our city looks. It's clean, it's nice. It could be cleaner, it could be nicer. My property could be cleaner and nicer too. There's blame to go around everywhere, but the thing is, there's so much confusion as well. Because when you're talking about the codes, they're so vague and left up to interpretation. And I've been through 3 codes enforcement officers, and I've dealt with what was okay with one codes enforcement officer was not okay for another one. And so obviously I was confused, and if I'm confused, I'm sure there's many other citizens confused as well. So I implore what is here of the council to maybe start thinking about talking or just having a discussion about cleaning up the ordinances.
Okay. I know one of the things on, if I remember the email right, on the ball field, that is a different group, not this, technically the city, is it not?
The Recreation Commission takes care of
Recreation,
it.
yeah, that's what I thought. And so I know they've been contacted, they're working on that one. The pool over there, would that be the same group or is that city?
I'm unsure about how the
Okay.
pool falls on that.
So we can check on that for you to see what's going on.
Is the garage that's on that property owned by the city or the Recreation Commission? Or
That is-
dealt
We'll have to
with?
check on that.
Yes, and
Yeah.
Mr. Owen, the report from the last meeting is online under code enforcement, the report that the council
Yes.
requested from Mr. Hendershot. So that full report is on there with pictures and whether those items have been resolved or not.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right.
Sure.
And I'm good to go. I just, the other thing I would implore is that, our legal fees this year have been astronomical. We budgeted for 50,000, they've been over almost 200,000. If you look at Olathe, they have an attorney on staff with the city, and they pay far less, and they're a much bigger municipality. So my question is, would have, of course, been directed then to Mr. Hendershot again, because he oversees the city. Why haven't we looked into hiring a attorney for the city versus having a attorney on a retainer, I guess is what it would be.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going, at that, I don't ask for an answer, but I would also take these and looking at all of these questions that I have let, and wonder if Mr. Hendershot, or, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to say that, I guess, but I just wonder if maybe we could have a better leader for the city.
Well, let's get into a tax like that. We understand what you're saying and we'll
Yes.
go that direction with it. Help.
I understand, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Sure. Is, the cars, I don't know if you remember the conversation I had with Mr. Hendershot, you were there, about how many cars can we
Yes.
have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I'll do is I'll talk with Mr. Hendershot and send him an email. He basically gave me a synopsis about how many cars you can have in front of the house and such. I don't know if there's really a limitation on the cars, but what they can have is a limitation if it's a single family home, you can't have multiple families in there using it like an apartment, etc.
Well, sure, yeah.
What we do have, what we can ask is Mr. Hendershot to provide that for some clarification, what we do have currently.
Okay.
Okay.
I would appreciate that, yeah.
All right.
I know that my frustrated neighbor would also appreciate that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Riffle.
So a couple of weeks ago, I put in a core request regarding Steve Owens' request for, I think they worded it as city oversight. My core request was, I'm kindly requesting a copy of the 2 legal memorandums produced to Councilman Steve Owen that was referenced in the last council meeting during my public comments that was in regards to his request for city operations oversight during COVID-19 and his question of the role and responsibilities of the council president. I am also kindly requesting a copy of Councilman Steve Owen's written question or questions that resulted in the two legal memorandums being produced, whether that be an email or a written letter. Lastly, I am kindly requesting a copy of the detailed invoices for the two legal memorandums. First off, I'm very glad to hear what Mr. Jenkins had said earlier. That was something I was going to point out. I actually had his clip and I was going to play it because I did get a copy of the original email where Councilman Owen had asked for his request. I also had a copy then where on April 24th, where Councilman Owen asked, he said, Mayor Ellis, please provide me with a copy of the statute, regulation, law, or rule that allows the city of Spring Hill to deny or approve my request for information based upon direction from the mayor and or approval of the governing body as a whole. And when I looked at these legal bills, there were a total of 3 documents, several pages. One document totaled up to $5,000, one totaled up to $9,526, and another one has a lot redacted from it, but the 3 that are on there that obviously are clearly related to Steve's request is about $1,100. So we're looking at $16,000. Is that all related to his request? Okay, the 3 of the core requests that I got were supposed to be detailed invoices regarding his request and what we paid out for that. And that's the 3 documents that were sent to me, and so it was $16,000 if I add that up correctly regarding his request.
Those dollar amounts relate to other items other than what not segregated out.
Okay, well, that would make a little bit more sense to me. When I read the memos, though, what I don't understand is that we had one document that's 9 pages long, very well written, very well explained, but it goes into reasons for the power and duties of an individual member of the city council and city council as a whole and of the city administrator. And it goes into a second one of a request for personnel and operation information from the city administrator in the capacity of a city council member. And it also has a third one, a request for information in the capacity as a resident and member of the public, in which would fall under the Kansas Open Records Act. And the fourth one is the matter addressed and consensus reached by the governing body. And I was completely confused why we had this long document when all he asked was for whatever rule, regulation, or what have you that prohibits the city administrator from giving him that information. And when I read 2 paragraphs, and I'd read it to you guys, but it basically says that in Spring Hill Municipal Code 1-105 says that the whole governing body has to agree to give him that information or he can't have it. But yet we produce this 9-page document costing a ton of money from, I think Mr. Leeton's comment was $10,000 that one night.
Yeah.
And then we also have a memorandum that goes through the roles and responsibilities of the city council president, and I don't see that in his email anywhere. What produced this memo to give him the roles and responsibilities of a city council president?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Jenkins, are
Can
you
you
able to
repeat your
respond to that or not?
No, but can you I just didn't catch what you were asking.
Memo as far as the does not address, this is not the right forum.
Okay.
Discussion about the scope and extent of the report. The report stands for itself.
But what was the I'm sorry.
My question was, what caused the memorandum to explain to the governing body the role and responsibility of a council president.
Okay, I just didn't hear, so.
I core requested it, and I was told I had the written reasons for that, and I don't see anything that would even relate to this memo.
I guess, Mr. Jenkins, what would be the correct forum for us to have this discussion?
Well, I can provide these answers to the governing body, and you can decide if you want me to direct me from those back to you.
Okay? Then I will direct you to provide that information to the governing body to answer these questions for us, and then we will get them back to him. Any other questions you need answered?
Yeah, and did I miss something on my core request? Was that, I mean, the way I read it, that was all part of the information that was provided to me?
I'm sorry, can you ask?
But the way I took my core request was that all that stuff was provided to me. Was that missing out of that was denied by some reason?
I'm confused at what your question
I
is.
think he's saying, was anything denied out of his court request?
No,
Did not get.
no, the response said, the response to you about your core request didn't say anything about being denied, correct?
Correct. I'm
Yes,
assuming everything
yes,
is
then,
here.
correct, nothing
And-
was denied.
One of the things I'd asked was for I'm kindly requesting a copy of Councilman Steve Owens' written question or questions that resulted in the two legal memorandums being produced, whether that was an email or written letter. And the two emails that I have is one where he writes to Mayor Ellis, please provide me with a copy of the statute, regulation, law, or rule that allows the city of Spring Hill to deny or approve my request for information based upon direction from the mayor and or approval of the governing body as a whole. My request is as followed. Would you please send me a list of the title, position names of city employees that are working from home? Please include the date each position started working from home. What is the duration working from home status assigned to each person? And then the second email is one from Councilman Owen to Mr. Hendershot saying that last paragraph. So when I read those, I don't understand why a memo was written about the roles and responsibilities of the council president. So, anyway, I'm glad it was written. Councilman Graves clearly doesn't understand why we have a junior mayor. And obviously he can read through it and understand, like tonight, the mayor's gone and someone needs to run the meeting. So I just think it's ridiculous, this simple question that was asked. And Leighton said that Steve Owen cost $10,000.
Actually, in the meeting, I said 4,500. There was a reference to $10,000.
I posted on Facebook. You can go back on and look at it.
Okay.
You said 7 to 10, way more than $10,000. And then later when you and I spoke, you said 7. So it's online now. You can watch
I was
it.
referring to another expense that we had done investigation on for 9,500. So there's another one out there.
Oh, well, 9,500 is another number you're throwing out. That's the first time you said that one. So, but that's all right. You like to throw numbers out there. But when it comes to, I'm glad that the addresses were resolved. I appreciate that because that was not a part of it. I don't understand the privacy part of it all. If he couldn't get that information, because then the way I read those memos is because then he gets an idea of where people are at and at what time, and that's an evasion of privacy. And if I'm understanding that correctly, then we probably need to not post the hours of City Hall, because it says they're 8 to 5, and I would assume then all full-time employees are not at their house and they're here in Spring Hill, or at the City Hall from 8 to 5. And lastly, I think that those memos need to get back through, because if I do have all the information that is correct, I think there was work done on that we did not request, and therefore the city should get a credit. But sounds like Leighton knows some more other things that are going on, and maybe that's for it. Thanks.
All right. All right, Mr. Jenkins, so we'll get that information to the governing body on the, what we talked about here, what you requested. Perfect. And are we able to break out the costs a little more detailed or not?
Well, that information, we can gather that information by going back
That we got, okay. And I may have to talk to you in private so we can discuss some things there. Okay. Yes, Mr. Boswell.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. Just wanted to make a quick comment and make sure that this isn't gonna cost the city a lot more money. I mean, it's obvious that there were some mistakes or misstatements, and nobody's perfect, everybody's human. But I think that, Mr. Jenkins, I would think it would be appropriate that since admittedly there was some misstatements or misunderstandings, that we should go back and look through this without costing the city a whole bunch of extra money.
And I will also take the responsibility when I ask a question to make sure we limit it to what I need.
Okay, that's all.
All right. The floor remains open for anybody for public comments. All right, we'll close public participation, and next is gonna be the public hearing. Did you have something you want to say real quick, Brandon? Do you need? No. Okay, perfect.
I thought Mr. Jenkins was.
All right.
That's what I was asking.
Ms. Landis.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. If you wouldn't mind if I turn it over to Mr. Ellsworth with Kutak Rock to provide some general information about the public the item, and then we can open the public hearing.
All right, perfect.
Thank you. Mr. Ellsworth?
Thanks, Ms. Landis. Good evening, Mr. Council President and council members. As Ms. Landis indicated, this is Tyler Ellsworth with the law firm of Kutak Rock, the city's council. There are actually two items on the agenda this evening that relate to this action item. The first is here, the public hearing, and the second item on the agenda is a bit later on, and that is the consideration of an ordinance adjusting the assessments in the Dayton Creek Phase 2 Special Benefit District. Just to provide a very brief background on what the hearing's about and what the ordinance is about that council is being asked to consider this evening. You'll recall that last year, the city levied special assessments in the Dayton Creek Phase 2 Benefit District to pay for certain public improvements that were constructed there, streets, sewers, and certain other related improvements. The city issued bonds last year to finance those improvements, and the bonds are payable over 20 years from special assessments paid by the property owners in that district. At the time that we issued those bonds, we, as your bond counsel, together with city staff, knew that in structuring the financing, that there would be some savings after the bonds were issued and after the assessments were levied. It turned out that the savings were greater than we anticipated, totaling approximately $170,000. Because this is a benefit district and because bonds are outstanding, it raised a question as to how to apply those $170,000 in savings. And so we are requesting the council's direction on how to apply those. And so essentially, this public hearing is to consider how to apply that $170,000 in savings. And there are essentially two choices that we've outlined for the council's consideration. One choice that the city has proposed is to essentially return the entirety of that $170,000 back to the property owners in the benefit district in the form of reducing the special assessments that are levied over the 20 years to pay back the bonds. The developer of the Dayton Creek subdivision, including this phase 2, PV Investments, has requested that a portion of that $170,000 savings be used to reimburse the developer for the cost of certain improvements which weren't financed through the assessments in the bond issue, and to return the balance that remains after that reimbursement to the property owners. So this public hearing is an opportunity for the developer and property owners and anyone else desiring to provide input on these adjusted special assessments to do so. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or turn things over to anybody who has comments.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Ellsworth? Okay, I'll now open the public hearing to anybody that wishes to speak on it. And we had nobody signed up, so I'm assuming we have nobody that wants to speak on it. So we'll close the public hearing. The next one is, we have two presentations. One's Spring Hill Community Business Survey Institute.
All right, thank you. My name is Jason Morado. I'm with ETC Institute. And ETC is a marketing research firm based in Olathe. And the thing we specialize in is conducting community surveys for local governments. And this past spring, we conducted both a resident and a business survey. So today I'm going to go through the key findings from both surveys. Primarily, I'm going to focus on the resident survey, but I have a few slides about the business survey as well. So ETC is based in Olathe, but we're a national leader in providing market research for local governments. We've been doing this type of work for over 35 years. And in the last 10 years alone, we've conducted surveys in more than 900 communities in 49 states. So this is really the type of work that we specialize in. So today I'm going to go through the purpose and methodology. What I call the bottom line up front is our main conclusions from the survey. And then I'll go through the major survey findings to show how we came to those conclusions. And of course, I'll be happy to answer any questions as well. And I'll start with the resident survey and take questions and then move on to the business survey. So there's several reasons to conduct a resident survey. One is to get an objective assessment of how satisfied residents are with major city services and to determine what residents feel are the top priorities for the city. We're also able to measure trends from previous surveys. This is the fourth time we've conducted a resident survey. And also we're able to compare your results with other communities across the country. So the resident survey was 6 pages in length. That's a typical length for one of our resident surveys. It was administered by a combination of mail and online to randomly selected households throughout the city. Our goal was to get at least 200 completed surveys, and we had a really good response. We actually ended up with 325. And one thing we always do when we administer these surveys is, as we're collecting the data, we check the demographics to make sure it reflects the actual population of the city. So we make sure we have a good representation by age, gender, geographic location. And the results of these 325 surveys at the 95% level of confidence has a margin of error plus or minus 5.3%. So essentially that means that if we conducted this survey the same way 100 times, 95 times the results would be plus or minus 5.3% from what we're reporting. So the results aren't perfect, but really it's a very small margin of error. So here's our main conclusions from the resident survey. We found that most residents are satisfied with fire and ambulance, police, and customer service. The top overall priorities for residents are maintaining city streets, planning and development, walking and biking trails, and maintaining sidewalks. And then the most important reasons why residents say they're living in Spring Hill are safety and security, the quality of public schools, the affordability of housing, and types of housing. So first we'll look at just some general satisfaction with city services. This is the very first question on the survey. Here we ask residents how satisfied they are with major categories of city services. And here we're asking residents to rate these areas at the big picture departmental level. And then later on in the survey we ask about some more specific areas within these categories. So one of the things that stand out here is there's a lot more blue than there's pink, which means the positive ratings overall outweigh the negative. The highest rated areas are fire and ambulance, police, and customer service. The one area that did have a significant level of dissatisfaction is maintenance of city streets, buildings, and facilities. We had 51% who were dissatisfied, 28% satisfied. We also had about an equal number of residents who were satisfied versus dissatisfied with planning and development. But for all the other areas, the positive ratings far outweigh the negative. And then we asked about satisfaction with various aspects of public safety. One of the things that stands out here is how few residents are dissatisfied with any of these areas. Other than animal control, for every other area, 10% or less were dissatisfied. And even for animal control, we had far more positive ratings than negative. So we also compared the results for Spring Hill against other communities. For these next few charts, the blue line are Spring Hill residents who were either very satisfied or satisfied. The red bar are the satisfaction ratings from residents throughout Kansas and Missouri, so that's your regional comparison. And then the yellow are the results from residents from all across the U.S. So this first slide is for major categories of services, and you can see you're rating much higher than other communities when it comes to fire and ambulance, police, and customer service. There are a couple areas that are rating below other cities, water and sewer utilities, and then maintenance of streets, buildings, and facilities. And the rest of these areas are pretty much on par with the regional and national average. For public safety, there's 3 areas where you rate much higher than other cities. That's the visibility of police in neighborhoods, how quickly police respond to emergencies, and just overall efforts to prevent crime. All the other areas are rating similar to the regional and national average. And then for maintenance, here we have more mixed results. High ratings for snow removal, mowing and trimming along streets, maintaining and preserving downtown. That's the area that had the most significant level of increase compared to the last time we did the survey, in 2016. And then areas that are rating below the regional and national average are maintaining traffic signals, street signs, city buildings, water and sewer system, sidewalks, and city streets. So we also look at the trends. I mentioned this is the 4th time we conducted this survey. Overall, the ratings are down compared to where they were in 2016, but I think there's a couple reasons for that. For one, that's a trend we've just seen nationwide over the past few years. And then also, this survey was conducted primarily throughout the month of March. So right at the time when schools were being shut down, businesses were closing. So just a lot of obviously unusual stuff going on. So I've listed here the biggest increases and decreases in satisfaction since the 2016 survey. By far the biggest increase is with maintenance and preservation of downtown. And I've just listed a few of the other significant increases. The biggest decrease over the past 4 years has been maintaining city streets. And then there's also decreases in a couple of areas related to managing growth and planning for future growth. Now, overall, the results are satisfaction ratings are similar to where they were in 2013. So here I've listed some of the biggest increases and decreases in satisfaction compared to 2013. The increases cover a variety of different types of services. A lot of the biggest decreases are related to streets and then managing growth. So now we'll switch and look at community priorities. This table is called the Important Satisfaction Rating. And this analysis is based on 2 different types of data. First, we ask residents how satisfied they are with services, which is the type of information we've been looking at. And then the follow-up question is which services are the most important for the city to emphasize. So the idea behind this is that those areas that have a combination of a low satisfaction rating but are also rated as the most important should be the highest priorities. So this first table is for just overall priorities. And by far, the 2 highest priorities are maintaining streets, buildings, and facilities, and community planning and development. This table is specifically about maintenance, and here, by far, the top 2 priorities are maintaining city streets and sidewalks. And then for public safety, the top 2 priorities are efforts to prevent crime and animal control. Now, we saw that residents are satisfied with efforts to prevent crime, so this doesn't mean that the satisfaction ratings are low, but it rates as high because residents feel like it's the most important area from this group to focus on. And then for parks and recreation, by far the top overall priority is walking and biking trails. So I've got a few other survey findings. We asked residents to rate the importance of various reasons for living in Spring Hill. So the most important reasons that were mentioned were safety and security, the quality of public schools, the affordability of housing, and then the types of housing. We asked which future projects the city should prioritize over the next 5 years. You can see by far the highest priority was walking trails. We asked residents what are the primary sources of information about city activities and services. The top source is the city newsletter. Other top sources are the city website, word of mouth, and Facebook. And then the follow-up question to that is, which methods are your most preferred to get information from the city? So the most preferred are the city newsletter, website, and Facebook. So the most preferred methods are aligned with the way residents are currently getting information about the city, which is good. It means people are finding information in the way that they're wanting to. So just a quick recap for the resident survey. We saw that most residents are satisfied with fire and ambulance, police, and customer service. The top overall community priorities, and this was based primarily on those important satisfaction tables, maintenance of city streets, planning and development, walking and biking trails, and maintaining sidewalks. And the most important reasons that residents are living in Spring Hill is safety and security, public schools, affordability of housing, and types of housing. So that's everything that I had for the resident survey. I've got a few slides on the business survey, but before we do that, does anyone have questions on the resident survey?
Questions. Can we go back to question 7? I just want to, you kind of went really quick, and I was going to make a couple notes.
Sure. Question.
I think it was question 7.
Question 7. Was it slide 7 or was
Or
it?
question 7. That's way back further than,
I don't see that.
I can't catch, you're going quick the other way.
Sorry. 7.
Not
17. No.
I don't think, I thought it was, well, can we get this presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Do you remember what the question was about or what the?
That was just on the overall satisfaction of the priorities. And I want to look, I think it was question 7, but it could have been question 17 too. Go back.
Okay, I'll go.
Oh, no, it was these projects.
This one here,
This is
okay.
what I was looking for.
Sure.
Well, go forward. Go forward one? Yeah, go forward with the question.
Forward.
Yeah, we went from 16 to question 8. That's what was throwing me off. It was question 16.
Oh, right.
Because you went from 16 to question 8, and that's what threw me off. Okay. It's actually question 16 is what I want to look at.
Yeah. Yep.
You didn't take it linear. So,
Didn't.
so he's
No, I didn't. Yeah, I mean, the full report is very detailed and comprehensive, so this is definitely kind of a high-level key findings, so, yeah.
You took them out of order, and I wasn't expecting. It's actually question 16.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're okay. It's just that's.
There was a 7-year spread, we last did it in 2013, we just did it in 2020.
2016 was the last one. Yeah, it was 16.
A 4-year spread between these types of surveys.
It varies. I would say most often is every 2 years, a little more frequently. Some do it every 3 to 4, but every 2 is probably the most often.
If I remember correctly, we had talked about doing one a couple of years ago, but because we didn't want to spend the money on it,
Yeah, right.
we canceled the whole. I think we deferred it to this year
Yeah,
because I think we were.
which I'm pretty good with 4 years, I think that's pretty accurate reflections.
Yeah. I think a lot of it reflects what we had before. I think what the unfortunate thing is always finding the funding sources of what people have to fund the higher priority and trying to get there.
Right.
So.
Okay. Anything else on the resident survey?
No.
Okay. So I've got a few slides on the business survey. So the business survey is a little shorter than the resident one. It's 5 pages, which is typical. The response rate is usually a little lower for business surveys than resident ones. This is the 3rd time we conducted the business survey. We did this one also in 2013 and 2016. This survey was administered by a combination of mail, online, and phone, and we received completed surveys from 45 businesses. So this was the first question on that survey.
So what percentage of the businesses responded?
You know, we mailed a survey to a little under 200, but I think we called some businesses beyond that. I'd have to double check on these.
So we got about 25% response rate?
I'll have to double check on how many we called, but I think it was between 20 and 25%, which is a really good number for a business survey.
Okay.
So this was the first question. We're asking about satisfaction, again, with major categories of city services. And here you can see the positive rating is far outweigh the negative. The lowest rated area is street maintenance, but even for that, you have 51% who are very satisfied or satisfied, only 22% dissatisfied. All businesses we surveyed were satisfied with fire and ambulance services. And then the follow-up question to that is, which of these services are the most important to your business? So the most important were street maintenance and police services. We asked businesses to rate the importance of various reasons for deciding to locate their business in Spring Hill. So the dark blue means it's extremely important. The far right red is not important, and then you can see the scale between there. So the most important reasons were low crime rate, the availability of telecommunications, utilities, and infrastructure, and then the attitude of local government towards businesses. And then the follow-up question to that is, which of these reasons will have the most impact on deciding to stay in Spring Hill over the next 10 years? So here the most important reason is the availability of telecommunications, utilities, and infrastructure. And then the other most important reasons are the overall image of the city, local schools, low crime rate, and the attitude of local government towards business. Just like on the resident survey, we asked businesses what are their primary sources of information about city activities and services. The number one source is word of mouth, followed closely by Facebook, the city newsletter, and the city website. So these are also the top 4 sources for the resident survey, but the order is just a little bit different. And then we asked, what are your most preferred methods of communication? So the most preferred are the same as the way people are currently getting information. Newsletter, website, Facebook, and word of mouth. Then we asked, how supportive are you of the city's efforts to redevelop Spring Hill's downtown corridor? And obviously, most businesses are supportive. 50% were very supportive. Another 30% on top of that were somewhat supportive, compared to only 7% not supportive. So that's everything I had for the business survey. Just a quick summary. We saw businesses have a high level of satisfaction with city services. The city services that are the most important for businesses are maintaining city streets and police services. And then the most important reasons for businesses remaining in Spring Hill are telecommunications, utilities, and infrastructure, overall image of the city, schools, low crime rate, and attitude of local government towards businesses. So does anyone have any questions on the business survey?
I have a couple. I
Okay.
always seem to usually do.
Go ahead.
So. One is this is actually for staff. Do we mail that newsletter out to the businesses? Because a high percentage of them really like that, so I was just making sure.
It goes to every utility customer, that gets any type of bill, whether it's electronic or mailed. So as long as they're a utility customer, then yes, they would get that newsletter. It's also available on our website.
Or hitting out of the gap, they might be a member of the chamber, but they may not be a utility customer, so, okay. That's just some,
We can certainly check into that.
so.
I just wanted to say that the chamber, we do send our newsletters to the chamber, and the chamber puts out.
Okay, I just was kind of curious, because I just wanted to make sure, because they had such a high response so that they enjoyed looking at it.
Right.
And then, we've had in the past with confusion on the downtown core, because depending on who you talk to, some people consider that Webster, some people consider it because they don't know that there's an old downtown, so. Were people, clear about what they were talking about? Because some businesses, a lot of people that come in town, I think the main downtown corridor, they think is Webster. And then people don't understand that there's actually the old downtown. So I was kind of curious if there was any way for you to get a little bit more drilled down into that information or not.
Yeah, I'll have to double check on the question, but I don't think we specified it more than this. This question was asked on the business survey, but not on the resident one. So I guess I'm not sure if businesses were clear on what was considered the downtown corridor.
So before we were to do anything with downtown corridor, I think we probably need to make sure we're clear with ourselves of what people are really expecting. And then, my memory from what I saw on the citizen survey, I didn't really see anything about telecommunications and internet on that one, did I?
No, I don't think we had any questions related to that.
Why was that?
I'm not sure. We don't typically, for resident surveys, a lot of times we don't ask those questions. We start with looking at the survey we conducted before and ask a lot of those same questions, make sure we can measure trends. have to go back and look and see if there's any discussion of possibly including those questions, but I don't think it was just something we talked about.
So you're saying other communities don't look at this?
For the resident survey, there's usually not questions about telecommunications and internet.
Why is that? That just seems odd to me with everything that's IT, information technology these days.
Right.
Sit there and have communities not being asked what they think about the internet is just really surprising.
But doesn't it differentiate between the city providing a service and businesses providing a service? 'Cause we were more geared towards city services.
Right, and that's really what the survey is mainly geared towards the city services. Now, Latha's survey does have some questions about general services not necessarily provided by the city, like internet, but that's not normal. Normally, our focus is primarily just on city services.
Put it in next time.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's something that we don't provide doesn't mean something that we shouldn't try to get a metric of, but trying to encourage within the community.
Right,
Very true.
yeah. Yeah, Latha's one of the few where we ask a question like that.
And a perfect example is
Yeah.
you asked them about schools. Well, the city council doesn't control the schools either.
Right,
We don't have, but we certainly have an investment in those.
right.
So,
Yeah, yep. Schools we do ask about, not on every survey, but pretty often for resident surveys.
well, it's one of the number one reasons why people pick where they live.
Yeah, yep,
And now internet is also up there on the list, so that's why I'm asking these questions.
yeah, yep.
Because right now, we still have a gap of trying to collect information on that.
Mr. Graves, anything?
I thought it was good. I would just want to call out for the police department. I think that was very high on all levels, so kudos to you all. I think a lot of it we already know, and it's a great tool to know where we need to put our focus and attention, and I think it reaffirms, where those resources, energy, effort need to go to. And for me, I think the survey's spot on. I do like your point about the downtown corridor because Webster is typically called Main Street. And I don't know, it says city efforts and not to knock the city on any means, but I do know there was a lot of individual small business owners, not myself, but others down there as well, that, it was them that developed it. I don't know what the city involvement and all of that was. So, for the survey to be just city resources, I would be curious why the internet wasn't included as well, because quick search of Spring Hill, and that's a hot button topic. So I think if we were to do this again, this definitely needs to be included. But I think we know the answer to it. So
It just helps us provide a
Yes.
basis to communicate to the community that we
Well, and it
actually have.
affirms that.
Right, it just affirms and also lets people know that we're actually looking at this.
Yeah.
This makes it look, that when we did the study, we didn't even look at it. And it's, where's your priorities of when you're not looking at it, when we actually really are, but this just doesn't give us a good appearance on that, so.
Mr. Eckert?
Nothing, sir.
Thank you. Oh, or a comment.
This time is Casey Burton, public specialist.
Can I get you to come up to the mic?
I actually helped ETC conduct the survey, and we did actually have 3 questions about internet on the resident survey. We had, in the final report that you guys sent us, we had, do you have access to the internet? Do you have access to the internet compared to 2005, 2016, and 2020? And then we asked where residents have access to internet, whether it would be home, work, library, or other.
Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify that we did have a couple of questions on there.
Oh, okay, I just must have mistaken and not seen them in there.
Okay.
Or maybe it's in the full report.
It's in the final report,
All right.
Oh, okay, great,
so,
that's what I'm looking for.
All right.
okay, thanks.
Ms. Lang,
Great, so we did ask this question.
Mr. Rodolfo, sir.
Comment since we don't have access to this report. My question would be, is there any comparative data between the 2016 and the 2020 in it, especially in the summary areas, like
Do we know
what people want and things like that?
We should, yeah, I mean, you conducted the previous one in 2016, the other thing is we should be able to just post this
Right.
online.
I would hope we can put the
Right.
whole thing online and then make it available to who wants it in detail.
We can also put the 2016
Right.
and the previous
Yeah.
versions, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and the full report does have those comparisons in it.
All right, perfect.
Yeah,
Oh,
yep.
good.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I just was delighted to see that on our essential services with first responders are so high.
Yeah.
Especially, with everything going on. I was delighted to see that people are supportive and pleased with what they were getting for the services. Because one of our biggest budgets that we spend money on is on our police departments, so.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, great, thank you.
Next presentation is going to be Parks Master Plan. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Larry Reynolds. I am with Vireo. I'm a landscape architect, and we were commissioned to work on the Parks Master Plan starting in spring of last year, lasted through the summer, and then we wrapped up early winter this fall, or this early winter this year. On the team with me was Barbara Heller from Barry Dunn, and Lamprey Nearson, and ETC Jason was part of this team as well. It was very much a community-driven plan in terms of the recommendations that we provided in here. We spent a lot of time reaching out through focus groups, staff interviews, public workshop, public open house, followed up with an online engagement to provide multiple means for people to provide input. And then that led into the statistically valid survey. We also provided a inventory assessment and analysis of park facilities and their amenities, the aquatic center in particular. We did our recreational programs and services analysis for the Rec Commission as part of this project. Operations and maintenance review. We provided planning and implementation, funding implementation, and capital improvements review. In terms of community outreach, like I said, we had a number of focus groups. We had about 40 participants that showed up for that. Employee meetings, 10. Public workshop, 10 participants. Online questionnaire we followed up with, we had 200, and the statistically valid survey, 331. So overall, over 580 total interactions with the public. We asked, how important is it for the city of Spring Hill to provide high-quality park facilities? And 64% said it is very important. Overall satisfaction with the value of parks and recreation in Spring Hill, about 50% were somewhat satisfied to very satisfied. You can see how that compares to the national benchmarks provided by ETC. Top 3 reasons preventing use of parks in Spring Hill. On the park side of things, amenities just don't match interests, was reported from 32%. Not interested or too busy from 26%, and 24% said age-appropriate amenities are a limiting factor there. The most important amenities, no matter what type of engagement we had, was trails. And you saw that in the community survey as well. Paved trails, hiking trails. In person, we also heard that multi-purpose courts were important. Online, we also heard that playgrounds were important. And in the survey, we heard that natural areas, passive recreation were important. Overall, system-wide, most important priorities. Number 1 was expand trails and improve connectivity, followed by promoting physical activity and wellness, updating park amenities, recreation programming, and adding parks in underserved areas. In terms of the recreation assessment, I'm just going to touch real briefly on this, and this really comes from ETC's priority investment rating, where we looked at the importance residents place on facilities and programs compared with how many residents have unmet needs in the facility, and then we're able to prioritize those from those 2 variables. So for youth programs and activities, youth sports programs, outdoor adventure programs, and outdoor nature education programs were the top 3 reported. For adults 18 and over, aquatic fitness programs, adult fitness and wellness, and general enrichment programs were the top 3 in that category. Just looking overall at age segmentation compared to your demographic data, in Spring Hill, there's an opportunity to increase the 18-plus adult programming, as evidenced by the comparison of 10% of the programming efforts are being provided for a group that comprises 66% of the population. So the Rec Commission is really looking at that more closely. In terms of the park assessments, again, nature and hiking trails, paved trails, and natural areas for passive recreation fell into that the top 3 high priority items. We looked at where parks are, how they're distributed throughout the community in terms of service areas for neighborhood parks and mini parks. That's a quarter to a half-mile radius. That's a 10-minute walking distance. And then for larger parks, special use parks, that extends out to 1 to 2 miles radius. You can see kind of towards the northeastern portion of the city, there are some yellow areas. These are, we've identified as those HOA areas that have park-type amenities that are helping to serve the needs in those areas where they're not city-owned parks currently. We look at a level of service to see where you should be in terms of commensurate growth with community and parkland. And we do that by comparing national and regional data, as well as looking at a comparison of your community to similar communities of similar budget sizes and population sizes. So looking at this, essentially in the bottom right corner by 2029, based on estimated population, you would want to see another 17 acres in additional parkland. Now that could come in a couple of different ways. For example, right now, Woodland Ridge, previously Melvin Murray Park, is really not an online park per se. It's more kind of a natural area. So bringing that online as more of a neighborhood park would add 15 acres to that level of service. You also have some parkland just south of the Aquatic Center that is planned for future development. When that comes online, that would help meet to that level of service as well. For each park, we provided a cut sheet and assessment, and it just kind of gives a location of where the park is, some inventory information, an effective service area. The blue lines on here show sidewalk connectivity, so you can see how accessible parks are from a pedestrian standpoint. We also do a level of quality type of assessment. We look at the park on a number of different qualitative assessment criteria: accessibility, character, connectivity, and usability. And then we look at the condition of park amenities and evaluate that to come to a good, fair, poor kind of rating. We provide a number of key issues and recommended improvements and put some dollar values to that as well for budgeting purposes. We did Lamper and Earson performed an aquatic center assessment and identified main deficiencies being a deteriorated concrete basin, deck cracks, rusted electrical boxes, and river slides. They put a condition assessment on a number of different items that you see in the plan, and along with a anticipated useful life and an estimated remaining life, so you can begin to plan for those items. In the survey, we asked how important it is to make improvements to the aquatic center. 63% said that it was somewhat to very important to do. In terms of operations, we looked at a comparison of operating expenditures per capita compared to surrounding areas. and really found that you lie just ahead of the median number. So on a per capita basis, $51 per thousand, where the median is 47. We also looked at it from a regional Midwest region and national comparison from data we got from the NRPA. Park maintenance and staffing, Dylan could really use a couple more people. I'm sure he'll tell you that, but you fall right in just below the lower quartile of benchmark comparison data from the NRPA. And moving to the lowest quartile means adding an additional 0.7 FTEs, and moving to the median would require an additional 2.7. We provided some minimum standards for operations, activities, turf maintenance, ball diamonds, and we categorize those into different maintenance modes, if you will, level 1, 2, and 3, and they kind of apply those to different areas of parks and all that they maintain to help kind of improve efficiencies. Action plan and capital improvements, we provided goals and objectives for the next 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5, and 5 to 10. So short-term, mid-term, and long-term, both for parks and for the Recreation Commission. We took all of those capital improvements that were recommended for each of the parks and prioritized those into what's it going to take to take care of what we have now, just taking care of what we have, expanding to meet evolving needs, and then planning for the future. We've broken those out as well. Kind of run through that. There's a lot in the plan itself. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer.
And this plan will also be available to us online or in some form?
Absolutely.
The next step would be for the city council to adopt the Parks Master Plan, correct, Mr. Jenkins? And that will come to you at a future meeting.
Perfect.
And then after that, or
Then
that
after
item, then it would be published, yes.
All right, thank you.
But we could get the presentation put online for people to see, correct?
Sure.
But I do have a quick question on the square footage areas. We have a lot of areas in some of these older subdivisions that only got brought in the early 2000s. They set aside green space for them, but they've never been developed. Like my subdivision, I don't know, Mr. Becker, if you have this other issue too, we don't have a homeowners association issue.
We do, but we don't have any green space.
See, we have green space, but no homeowners association. So we have these things that were happening, that before some of us got here even. But is that square footage, like, it's several acres in my subdivision. I mean, and there's a little creek that goes through that. Is that in your numbers for the areas? Because there's a lot of those areas and they're not.
City-owned property?
City property.
Yeah. I mean, something that they maintain in terms of total maintenance, but in terms of park, being a neighborhood park or what have you.
It's designated as green space for park,
Yeah.
but it's never been developed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we mow it, so to speak,
Right.
but that's why I was asking if it was included in there, because there's a lot of that, like, there's my subdivision, there's Woodland, not Woodland, Village on Victory, the other one, sorry. But there's 2 or 3 subdivisions and other ones that we can't come in at the time, before I even lived here, where it's just, they've thought about making it into a park, but it could be land that can be added to the square footages, it's just undeveloped.
Right, absolutely. They come online, they're gonna count towards your level of service, for community, for neighborhood parks or what have you.
We probably need to go back to our inventory and make sure we get that added in there.
Yeah.
Of the square footage, it's not because they're gonna add to us to make it look good, it's just, hey, these are the properties that we could do something.
In terms of looking at operations and how much, area the parks maintains, yes, that's included. I think there's 90 acres total that Parks mows and maintains.
I wanna just make sure we do get it put in there, because it might be more than what is actually in there.
Okay.
But.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
That brings us to our consent agenda, and just a friendly reminder, item 4 was deleted on the consent.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second the motion?
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Who had the second?
Joe.
I don't always hear roll.
That's right. No? Item 5 is deleted, so we're gonna go to item 6, ordinance number 2020-14. Ms. Landis, are you handling this one?
Thank you. Actually, I'll ask if Mr. Ellsworth is still on the line, if he would like to just open it up, or
Okay.
if there's any additional information he'd like to
All right.
offer before, or if you have questions.
Okay.
Mr. Ellsworth?
Thank you, Ms. Landis. This is Tyler Ellsworth again with the law firm Kutek Rock. Yeah, I do have a couple remarks. This is a couple brief remarks. This is the second item on tonight's agenda relating to the Dayton Creek Phase 2 Special Benefit District assessments. There are actually 2 separate ordinances in the agenda materials that have been prepared. Depending on sort of the comments that we thought you might or might not receive at the public hearing and questions or comments that you all had as council members, one ordinance authorizes the reduction in special assessments for property owners in the Phase 2 benefit district by the full amount of the $170,000 savings. The alternate ordinance reduces special assessments by $77,000 or so, and uses the remaining $93,000 to reimburse the developer PV investments for construction of certain trail improvements. So you have the alternate ordinance, which was the city proposal, the city option. I'm sorry, you have the first ordinance, which is the city proposal, the city option to reduce assessments by the full $170,000 savings amount. And in the alternative, you have the alternate ordinance, which would be the proposal requested by the developer to only use a portion of the savings in the amount of $77,000 to reduce special assessments. So hope that wasn't too confusing. Happy to answer any questions about these 2 alternate ordinances. The request to you all, to council this evening, is to select one of these ordinances and pass one of these ordinances that would direct staff to apply this $170,000 in one way or another.
Based on that, it sounds like we need to make sure that when we make the motion, we need to have the amount in there if we're gonna do the full 170.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's what we talked about in the past, was doing the full 170.
okay,
Just return it to the taxpayers.
well, fine.
Any questions?
I do not have any questions.
No, I think we're good, so I need a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-15.
14.
14.
14. We talked about that, I
Yes.
still wrote down 15. I move to approve ordinance number 2020-14 for the ordinance specifically adjusting special assessments by the approximate amount of $170,000.
Second the motion?
And that'd be the full return of the money to the.
Correct.
Right, correct. Second, any discussion? And I think this needs a roll call vote.
Mr. Owen?
Aye.
Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Leeton?
Yes?
Mr. Eckert?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
And then the next one, Ms. Landis, I see that you too.
Thank you. This one is a resolution in front of you that is authorizing the public sale of approximately $3,125,000 of principal amount of general obligation temporary notes and approximately $6,650,000 principal amount of general obligation refunding bonds, which is series 2020A and 2020B, the GO bonds would be taxable under federal law, and this would all repeal the resolution that we had in front of you at a previous meeting where we talked about just the temporary notes. And there's a reason for that. So on August 27th, the council approved resolution 2020 R16 authorizing the public sale of the temporary notes. And that temporary note issue is going to fund the Dayton Creek Special Benefit District Phase 4 in the amount of $2,050,000, and also the 199th Street and Ridgeview Roundabout in the amount of $1,075,000. Nothing has changed with that portion of it. However, we did add to this resolution, there was an opportunity that came up between that time and now, for an advanced refunding of some GO bonds that we already have in place, that may potentially produce interest savings of nearly $800,000 beginning in 2021 and over the remaining life of the bonds. And those three general obligation bonds are Series 2011A, which was dated August 1 of 2011, in the principal amount of $3,985,000. There was GO improvement bonds, which was Series 2012B, dated July 31st of 2012, in the original principal amount of $4,745,000. And GO bonds Series 2013A, dated October 10th, 2013, in the original principal amount of $1,625,000. The purpose of bringing the resolution to you now is to authorize that we would have a public sale. That public sale would be dated for October 8th, if I do not have the wrong date. I believe that's at the first council meeting in October. And we would move ahead with publicizing both of those sales if you were to approve the resolution tonight. We do have on the phone with us Ben Hart from Baker Tilly, who is our municipal and financial advisor. If you have any questions about the advanced refunding, he can absolutely answer those questions for you. I want to maybe just express a little bit more about the interest savings. The interest savings that are related to the GO bond advanced refunding will impact funding sources. And I just listed here the types of funding sources that would be impacted by those savings. I didn't list exact amounts because we don't actually know until sale date what those new interest costs or interest savings might be, but the interest rates are lower right now, and so we're hoping that it would produce some sort of savings there, and to us, that's a pretty significant savings to take advantage of. We would be impacting the wastewater fund for improvements of the wastewater treatment plants and North Lift Station, construction of a building, and the city at large portion of the North Sanitary Sewer Special Benefit Districts. It impacts the funding for the special assessments for North Sanitary Sewer Districts number 3 and 4, and also ad valorem taxes supporting the debt service fund for the renovation of the current Spring Hill Police Department. And I want to be very clear, this is not new funding. This is funding and GO bonds we already have in place. It's just that those are the funding sources that pay the debt service on there. So nothing in here is a new project being funded.
We're just looking to get a better interest rate on our.
Yes, yes. And so do you have any questions about the addition of the GO bond advanced refunding?
It's more of a comment / question. Is on the advanced refunding of the general obligation bonds that you have listed down here, it'll be Series 2011A, 2012B, 2013A, the amounts that you have listed were the original amounts that were sold at, right? Those
The original principal amounts.
Principal amounts.
Mm-hmm.
And so those don't necessarily add up to the 6.65 million. If I'm understanding correctly, that's the remaining balances of those three funds.
You are correct. That's the remaining balance of principal on those 3 GO bonds.
And I'm also I wanted to make sure one, I was correct, but also for anybody that reads through that, if they were to try to add that money up, they would be trying to figure out how you got to the 6.65.
Yes, thank you for that clarification.
So,
That's helpful.
Just wanted to make sure that I was accurate, which I thought I was, but also make sure that people understood what we were doing.
Mr. Eckert?
So.
And
No, I understand it.
we're good? All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution 2020-R-17.
Second?
Second motion?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And so it's 4-0.
Very good, thank you very much.
Then we'll move on to discussion items. The first one is going to be recycling waste management. John Blessing. I think he's trying to get us up. He's got Chiefs.
He might get home for halftime.
Okay.
Oh. Again, my name is John Blessing. I work with my counterpart Bryce Smith, who runs our operations that actually services the city of Spring Hill, and we've been meeting with all of our municipalities over the past year, and started a conversation with Mr. Hendershot a couple of months ago, and he wanted us to come today to provide some data about what's happening kind of to the global recycling market, along with some of the options that we talked to Mr. Hendershot about, some of the changes that would need to take place to some of the recycling. Now, again, tonight is just information only, although towards the end I'll show you the options that we are discussing, with the hopes that we can saturate you with information, have follow-up questions, and then at a later date, come to some kind of decision on that kind of stuff. Got a fancy clicker here. Let me see if I can figure it out. There, the advanced. Oh, over here. Hey, look at that. Okay, so whether or not you have not heard anything about this, several years ago, there was a major change to the recycling market. China was the largest buyer of recycling a few years ago, and they really tipped the entire industry on its ear by reducing what they're importing, but more importantly, setting a contamination standard of 0.5%, meaning all the recycling that we collect when we ship it overseas, 0.5% of contamination, trash, things like that, is acceptable. Previously, we were around the 10% mark. This has really, China has pushed themselves out of the market completely at this point. And we found other recycling markets, but unfortunately, as that bright green square at the bottom says, everyone is following their lead. So every mill or every end user of recycling materials has now adopted this 0.5% contamination standard. This has, no one's meeting that, by the way, right? No one puts the recycling in their cart and is at a 0.5% standard. So unfortunately, that has dropped the demand, right? So commodity values have plummeted. Recycling just isn't as valuable as it used to be. There's still a great value to it. It just takes, at this point in time, a lot more decontamination to get it to a point where anybody even wants it. There's a myth that's long old that recycling was just making money hand over fist based on the commodity values. Not quite true. What it has done in the past is subsidize itself. It's paid for itself. It is paid for the labor required to decontaminate the material with the commodity values that we would get from paying that material. So again, kind of the evolution of recycling here, really that first square at the top, when everything started with single stream recycling, it was quantity over quality, right? Everybody wanted to recycle more, divert out of landfills. This is 2012, everybody wanted to make it easier that you could get everything in the container and keep it out of the landfill. The pendulum has swung, and now the focus is on quality over quantity. It just recaps a little bit in there about the 0.5 contamination rate, and then the bottom square over here will show, on average, about 25% of everything that we collect out of the carts on the curb is trash. And we have to get that from 25% to about 0.5% before we can then move it to an end user. So this graph is a little old. It only goes through the end of 2018, and you can see it's there at about the 22% recycling, contamination stream. The green bar in the middle was updated about 25%, kind of what that previous slide showed, of everything we collect is trash. There's an example there, about 450 pounds of trash for every ton of material that we collect, and our customers, those end users, are expecting that to be less than 10 pounds. So again, this focuses on the need to decontaminate the recycling. Whatever option the city chooses to go at a later date, we think the first step is going to be education. So I've talked to Mr. Hendershot about rolling out some educational campaigns to the city. We have done numerous for other cities in Miami County, a large majority of the cities in Johnson County. This was pre-COVID, where we would have open houses and we would bring in recycling materials and real hands-on and show people. The big kind of eye-opener that we would always see is what we call wishful recycling. Like people that really think they're doing the right thing, and then they come to find out what they're doing is wrong. Our biggest example, and I talked to Bryce this morning, who often will ride the truck through Spring Hill, says that you see these bags full of clean recycling. Somebody's scraping out the peanut butter, they're putting it through their dishwasher, and then they're putting it all in a plastic bag. That immediately goes into the contamination pile, because the plastic bags are not recyclable, and they're actually a tangler for the equipment. So when that goes through the processing line at the recycling facility, I mean, that's already diverted into trash. So there's a lot of ground we can gain by education. So, I mean, just informing those people of that would solve a lot of the problems. So again, whatever path we go down, we want to work on some type of educational campaign with the residents, be it virtual, be it a mailer, be it, I don't know, because again, our biggest successes is with kind of open house community events, and I know in the era of COVID, that may not be something that we can look at fourth quarter of 2020, but maybe hopefully in the first 2 quarters of 2021. Some of the options that we discussed with Mr. Hendershot, it comes down to about 3 options. The first one would really be no change to the service whatsoever. We have calculated some of the tonnages that we gather out of Spring Hill, and to meet the new requirement of 0.5% contamination, we would look at a price increase to decontaminate the recycling that we collect from Spring Hill. I think we looked at it and it came out to 51 cents per home per month, about 11 cents a week. Option 2 would be to reduce the collection schedule, right? So everything would stay the same, except we would collect recycling every other week instead of on a weekly basis. Now, whether or not that's truly every other week or half the town every week, for the resident, it would be an every other week schedule. This allows us to divert the savings that we would get, the efficiencies and the savings we would get from not having to run that truck and that driver every week, and then we can divert that to the contamination costs, right, to cover that 51 cents. So there would be no change in the rate for the city of Spring Hill. It's just that it would be collected on a every other week basis instead of on a weekly basis. There are some options for bigger carts. The question that always comes up is, well, I fill up my bin or I fill up my 65-gallon cart. We could look at larger carts being available if the storage is going to be 2 weeks instead of 1. Of course, there's nothing contractual about this at this point, so option number 3 is you can simply do nothing. There is some contractual language that says we are not required to collect contaminated recycling. So if you chose option 3, we would have our drivers start to do kind of curbside checks of carts. We haven't had anyone pick this option yet, so I don't have a lot of information on it, other than we would suspect that it would elongate the time that it takes to service the city, because today it runs pretty fast. Of course, if the driver's having to get out, take a look at some stuff, and get back in the truck and move on, and that would add hours to how long it takes to provide that service. And then, again, I'm not sure how it would work. We would tag it, report it as contaminated. Resident would probably call the city, say my trash or my recycling was missed, I got this funny tag on it, and then, there would be that conversation of here's why, and that would need to be rectified before it could be collected on the next go-around. Again, quick and to the point, this was really just kind of a kicking off spot. If you've got general questions, Mr. Hendershot has asked that we provide him some additional data, some of this data in written form. We've already begun conversations with him too on what that educational campaign would look like. And then ultimately, you know, if we targeted January of '21 as an effective date for an option that the city would choose, that gives us 3 months, 4 months to go through that information, ask questions about, you know, what those options would look like, and then ultimately, you know, we would want to come back and get some kind of decision from the council on which direction you would want to go. That is it in a brief synopsis.
I do have one comment.
Absolutely.
The bins.
Yeah.
Every time they get put out, it seems like we have a high wind day. And stuff's all over the street.
Yes.
It's frustrating.
We don't even inventory those bins anymore. They're an outdated thing. Unfortunately, it's not unfortunate, but in 2015, when I think the contract was extended with Spring Hill, I think it was 2015. This wasn't an issue, wasn't brought up. I can guarantee you the next time we negotiate contracts, the bins are gone, right? That's not anything that we're gonna continue to do, because you're absolutely right. They don't have lids, they go everywhere, and quite honestly, I think everyone produces more than, 23 gallons that those bins are. They're very small.
Yes.
The standard is the 65 gallon, which I know those are an option to rent. Again, those things can be looked at, the way the contract's structured now. There's a rental option. You can rent a 65, you can rent a 96 gallon. So we can certainly go through and look at some of that. In fact, we had one city that we're looking at, where they're on the same kind of rental program. And I don't know what the savings will be, because we're not done with that analysis yet. They're looking at going to the every other week and then asking, what is there about reducing that rental charge? If we did something like that, they're anticipating that a lot of their residents are gonna want the larger containers. And, it was just quite frankly, they asked, is there any way we can lower that charge? And we're looking at what savings will wean from reducing the collection. A portion of that has to go to that decontamination effort. That's really the whole point that we're talking about. But if there's anything extra that we could look at to reduce the rental costs, and that would be the same case with Spring Hill as well.
That was my question. Can you go back a slide?
I can surely try.
Thanks.
Yeah.
My question was, like, if we go to that 96 gallon versus the 65 gallon, is there an increase in fee for upgrading to that 96? Like, you put that as an option.
Sure.
But would the cost of option one offset the cost of upgrading to a bigger cart type of situation? So like that 96 gallon cart, you said there's an option versus the 65.
Correct.
Would we pay more for a 96 gallon one within this option as well?
Right. I think today the rental is $2.50 for a 65 gallon cart and $3 for 96.
Okay.
We are kicking around just trying to make the 96 gallon cart the same as the 65 gallon cart as far as the amount goes. And I think that's very doable. I don't have my pencil sharpened on that math today,
Right.
but I think that's
Perfect.
so. In that case, there would actually, I guess if you combined option 1 and 2 to that fact.
Yeah, and I was kind of looking at option one, like, well, if you're going to pay more either way,
Right,
get
right.
a bigger bin, but if there's not a charge to go from 65 to 96, then
And that the difference in those rates are 50 cents, so that would almost offset their
Right.
increase. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's certainly something that we can look into. I will make that as a note. I think that those options are well within grasp.
Cool.
Okay. Of course. Okay. Okay, how to
Cost of these containers, you said there's a certain cost on the container per month. What's the actual cost would be? And is there a point where the actual person would actually own these containers? Because
No, they wouldn't be owned. It's kind of like insurance premiums. We charge the monthly rental fee because there is a large number of residents who call us and say, the wheel's broken off, there's a hole that magically appeared in the side of my cart is missing, and we replace those without question. So that all kind of goes into the cost to maintain the carts. And believe it or not, as rugged as they look, the replacement and upkeep costs on those carts is quite a lot. So you may be a resident that has gone through 4 carts in a year, and then your neighbor may have gone through none. So you're both paying the rental fee, but it all kind of goes into the kitty of the large sum of carts that we have on the street at Spring Hill to offset the replacement and upkeep of those carts.
But if you have one of these large carts of your own anyways, I mean, are you gonna sit there and require to make them rent to?
Oh, no. Currently, the residents have the option of just going to Home Depot, buying their own cart, writing recycling on it, and that's fine with us.
You're not gonna change that, that's basically what my question is.
No, they don't need to
I'm one
rent
of those
carts
people
from
that
us.
have one
Yeah.
of the big ones, cause I got tired of chasing stuff down the street.
Right, yeah. There's no reason that we would require the use of the waste management cart if the resident, let's say you go to option 2 and it's every other week, and they wanna go to Home Depot and buy a gigantic cart, that's fantastic.
And then there was a slide where you showed the graph and it went steep up.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's contamination levels, and it's actually a little bit old because that line that it hits is 22. That top line on that graph is 24, and today we're at 25.
My question is that's national, right?
I believe it is.
The reason why I'm asking is has nationally, have they cut back on how much trash you can put into the trash? And the reason why I'm asking that is are you getting contamination? Because you don't get to throw as much trash away, so what they're doing is throwing the trash into the recycle, and then it gets thrown into the contamination.
Sure.
So my thing is we need to make sure that we're not cutting back ourselves on what we do on trash, because
Right.
what's gonna happen is your contamination level will go out the roof because people still have the same amount of trash.
Right. None of this would involve any kind of reduction in trash service at all. In fact, your point is highlighted in the COVID era, because more people are at home, they're not throwing things away at their offices. We're noticing trash cans getting fuller and fuller, and quite honestly, you're right. Some people just say, there's a half-empty can, it says recycle on it, but I'm gonna use it for my trash can now. And we get a lot of that as well. But I think that could maybe be stemmed by some of those educational efforts.
I mean, that definitely happened in my household when my kids came home from college. We went from about this much trash to about that much.
Right.
I didn't remember how much they could produce until that happened.
There was a great regional, local, and national trend where trash volumes was going down because people were doing more recycling. But stay-at-home orders have flipped that script, so to speak, because there's so many people just producing so much trash at home now.
And then you said, go back to the actual option.
Oh,
one.
okay. Correct.
So you're saying 51 cents per month is what that fee would be on top of what we were already paying now?
Correct.
Okay. That's all right. I mean, it's not all right that it would be 51 cents. It's just, it reminds me of a story of when we first passed the unilateral. I don't think you were on council at the time.
Was it?
I went to Thanksgiving dinner and I had to hear from my dad why he had to recycle and had to be part of it for $1 a month. When he finally figured out why and understood, it was a little bit of a different thing, but now he's one of the more avid recyclers that I've seen around town. But my point is that 50 cents is still 50 cents. And
Sure.
for people, especially like my dad who's 83 now, he's a fixed income, so
Right.
he thinks $6, I mean, it's still $6. So
Absolutely.
don't marginalize it.
Absolutely. If there aren't any other questions, that's really all I have. I will be following up with Mr. Hendershot in the next week or so, just to confirm that we've kind of presented this information. I'll have a little more in-depth conversation with him, and then I'm sure we'll return and kind of look at which direction you want to go. Should there be any questions that arise between now and then, please feel free to reach out, contact us. My contact information is available as well, and we'll go from there. I appreciate your time.
sir.
I'm not sure, there you go.
Chief Hanson, golf cart ordinance.
Good evening. This is a follow-up discussion from last council, August 27th. To recap, residents had inquired about authorizing golf carts on city streets. As a result, I was asked to research the options related to legalizing golf carts on city streets. Our first discussion was held on July 7th, where I presented the information I had found. Following July 7th discussion, the city sent out a survey on Facebook asking residents if golf carts should be allowed on streets with speed limits of 25 miles an hour or less. 774 people responded, and of those responses, the majority agreed golf carts should be allowed, drivers should be licensed and insured. August 27th, a draft of the possible ordinance was provided, along with additional information addressing comments or questions related to safety, signage, and road types. Additionally, the city posted the draft ordinance on social media and encouraged residents to comment and send in an email. Those comments and emails were shared with me, Mr. Hendershot, and the governing body. Of those responses, the difference between those who support golf carts and those who don't were virtually even. The no's led by 1. There were 13 emails. There were 41 total comments. Out of the 41 comments, however, 23 were specifically related to the golf cart, not a response to another comment. Based on the comments from our last discussion, along with the Facebook comments and emails recently shared, there were suggestions that were incorporated in the updated draft. Those updates included lowering the speed from 30 to 25 miles per hour, updating the definition of golf cart from 3 wheels to 4, adding the word unrestricted for the driver's license, and addressing the limitations of any modified golf cart. There are obviously pros and cons to adopting this ordinance. The pros involve improved community engagement within neighborhoods, a greener footprint in traveling to the pool, and its overall favorability with the community. This ordinance does limit where golf carts may travel. It does not allow golf carts on our main thoroughfares such as Webster and Woodland and Ridgeview, Lone Elm, and 191st, 199th, 207th, 223rd, to name some. However, it does allow for golf carts to cross those streets. The cons involve potential safety hazards of the carts. As I mentioned before, it can take as little as 11 miles an hour for someone to fall out if they're not paying attention or holding on. We also know, unfortunately, there will be those that will be underage driving. There will be unlawful riding and horseplay. Those will occur as they do now. And there will be some that will operate golf carts on streets with higher speed limits because it may be a faster route to get to where they want to go. The growth of the city should be considered, especially as we consider any expansion to this proposed ordinance. With the exception of Lenexa, or for Lenexa, all the other cities that authorize golf carts are smaller than our city. Lenexa's ordinance is like our draft. We're very similar to what Lenexa has written. Those are all the updates that I have for you today.
I have a couple questions for you, Chief. I know some people have talked about them. This is kind of somewhat evolved from a residential area golf cart. People are starting to talk about, well, we can go to the grocery store, we can go get pizza. Kind of evolving into a much larger area that could cause us more issues. I like the fact that we're reducing it to only 25-mile-an-hour roads. Talked to you earlier about if I understand correctly now, it does not prohibit people from crossing roads with greater speed.
Right.
Correct, even 169.
Right, but we could add something that says you can't cross a federal or state highway.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused, not to contradict you, but it says it should be unlawful to operate a cart on. Okay. So
And where's this? There's another
add
one in
or
here.
to cross is what you're asking to say?
It's a G.
There isn't a provision in here.
Or to just amend this one to say to cross, is that what you're looking for?
Looking to prevent them from crossing.
Right,
agree with
we
that.
could just amend this one,
Yeah.
or on
See
any
here,
cross.
G. Look at G on that page. Read that one.
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that,
I think that would be like a roulette, Russian roulette and golf carts.
Yeah,
I just wanted to.
Yeah,
I guess-
that's what I was looking at there. Is that G? Is it
Yeah,
says-
G, we could basically cross out the federal or state or.
And I've had people
highway.
I actually had people ask me, do we even do it with like Webster and any road over 25 mile an hour you can't cross, to kind of rein everybody into the residential area so you're not traveling all over campus.
Right.
You know,
I just wonder if there's like signage, like implications, like are we paying for signage with this, or what kind of like, I mean, obviously there's speed limit posting signage throughout, but I mean, is that, you know, at every intersection, like, how do you kind of prohibit that, or is it just?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned before, additional roadway signage would not necessarily be necessary. But if there are locations that have a high percentage of golf cart use, you could do a golf cart and use sign, share the road kind of stuff. You know, whether we want to put no golf cart allowed on city streets, that'd be a lot of signs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think it'd be interesting to do some sort of campaign from a city perspective, just for the knowledge share, kind of like, I don't even know his name, from Waste Management. John was talking about how they went in and did things like, you know, one-on-ones with people and showing them the trash thing. If there was some sort of campaign the city could put together, whether it's videos on Facebook or whether it's just a blitz on that, because I think there's a lot of interest in this, obviously, from the feedback you received. So I just want to make sure people understand, you know, like crossing a highway or crossing whatever roads, those things aren't allowed.
And I know we have interest in UTVs also, and this kind of came back to start with golf carts, I think is a good thing. Let's see how we do.
Right.
And I know there's been discussion of not doing a registration. And because we don't want to have the police department have to go and inspect a golf cart. I don't know the legality. I know people have said to me that they have no issue with having a registration of some sort. Some said even picking some of the higher numbers that are out there. I don't think we need to do that, but like signage.
Yeah, that's
We
where.
may have to collect some money somehow with the registration. I don't know if it's legal, Mr. Jenkins, to do a self-registration, where you as a person, as a golfer, may get a piece of paper with a checklist that says, this is what I have my insurance, I have what I need. Sign it in with a copy of insurance, send it in, and we give you some type of a tag.
Well, I reviewed some of the ordinances some time ago, but maybe the chief has seen the concept of registration or, no fee, but just register. And question, I think this is the ordinance, some other ordinance where you get into an administrative cost.
Right.
Staff
Mm-hmm.
would have to keep track and is it worth it? To answer your question, I believe some jurisdictions do some type of registration, either fee, no fee, just to have
A record of some sort.
record of what's going on. I don't remember which jurisdiction. So, to answer your question, this is definitely an option, pros and cons.
What I was looking at is more of a registration fee to the point of paying for the signs. If we have to do signs in neighborhoods, if that covers that, so.
Yeah.
It may be an option, maybe somebody decide, hey, we don't want to do it,
Right.
and that's fine.
I know one of the issues we talked about when we got rid of dog tags or registering your vehicles.
Right.
Or your
Exactly.
pets was, people weren't doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
You weren't generating that revenue that you thought you were gonna have to do something.
And I think to the mayor's point, it's something like it was just, you know, you're
You're
punishing
taxing law-abiding citizens.
citizens. So I agree
Yeah, I
with that
understand
too. I just, you know, you don't want to lose money on this or have a big cost for this.
Right.
No,
If we have to have some sort of signage or information postings, I don't know. I don't really feel like I go to Lenexa and see those signs everywhere, so I don't know how necessary it is.
well, I think theirs are mostly in residential neighborhoods, and they're structured a little differently than we are, you know. And when initially it started out with subdivisions that have, you know, that are kind of their own entity in and of itself, whereas we have other, the Old Town over here that is still a 25 mile an hour, it's residential, but it's not necessarily self-contained.
Right.
And I don't really know in Lenexa whether they have golf carts in old Lenexa or if it is only in their subdivisions.
I don't want it to get to be where there's a lot of rules and hoops to jump through in order to drive a golf cart.
Right.
I think it would make more sense to put the responsibility on the end user, that they have insurance and a valid driver's license and those things.
and we just
From the
enforce
city's
it as we go.
perspective. And then there is enforcement in the community by your officers that would be
Yeah, certainly they
in
could,
what they do, so,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Mr. Boswell has a question. Can you come up to the microphone real quick?
Actually, has some.
You have some, Jim? No.
Yeah, one thing I want to make sure is very clear in the idea of this golf carts is I believe that it should be okay for a golf cart to cross any road that a bicycle could. They do have acceleration. It's not like they go putt, 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 putt. You know, I mean, they have acceleration to cross a road safely. If you want to keep them off of roads that are 45 mile an hour, I understand. If you want to keep them off of Webster, I understand, but you should at least let them cross those roads. Because if you do, that allows more connectivity for the neighborhoods.
Okay.
Yeah, my only concern is the highway. I mean,
That's the big one
the
right
big
there.
one.
That's the real big
I think
one.
Webster and things you can,
And that's just brought up. I have no
Yeah.
problem if we want to cross it.
yeah, I think, but it's something to put in there for the highway, like, at least to deter some people from that. It just seems.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you a question, Chief, that's gonna throw a little wrench in the works. Like, 199th Street, half of it's county, half of it's city. Correct. You can't drive on it anyway in a golf cart.
right.
But this only affects city streets, correct? County streets, I don't know if we have any that connect that would cause.
Well, the county would fall under the ordinances for the state on the STOs, and whether they would have adopted something different, I don't know.
Okay.
But to your point, and I know that was a comment that came up in one of the Facebook emails about the borders of Spring Hill versus the county. Those streets are on speeds that a golf cart would not be allowed on
Right.
at all.
Mhm.
So that
Shouldn't
would
be an
answer
issue.
that question.
Okay. All right.
so what's stopping someone from driving a golf cart to high school?
Well, let's see.
Other than it would be illegal, it's just what stops people from speeding.
Yeah.
They're gonna break the law, and then it's
Yeah.
our job to try, if we're in the right place at the right time, to stop and cite. So, yeah, I mean, you can have that occur if we add a lot of golf carts, because right now it's unlawful and we have a lot of golf carts already in operation. And if you open it up, does that open up, as a resident reported, you know, you, give an inch to take a mile, as it was stated in one of the comments. You know, and that's what you are all having to balance,
Yeah.
is what that decision is.
I think one thing on here I see that still needs to be changed is probably crossing the highway.
Strike that.
Even though we think it's probably not a safe thing, but if it's legal, they'll try, somebody will do it.
Yeah, I made a note to adjust that.
Mr. Leaton?
Well, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a big proponent. The constituents I talk to, a lot of them have real safety concerns. They're not big proponents of it. In the neighborhood I'm in, and that's partially also because we have these people driving around with like UTVs, ATVs, waking people up in the middle of the night on top of that, and they're just saying, why do we need to go this way? But for me personally, it's always, and I said this from the beginning, and I'm the one that sent you a ton of questions on safety, and I just keep going back to that. But the one thing that, why would we not consider seatbelts is the thing that really gets me is case study after case study that I've looked at a couple weeks ago. I just spent the entire evening going through the Insurance Institute things and such. Is even at 11 miles an hour left-hand turn, a young child can get thrown over. And the biggest problem with it is when they get turned out, that small handlebar acts as a fulcrum point and creates a head injury. And that's just, those are the types of things that make me very reluctant. I don't want to have to explain to somebody and sit there and say, yeah, I did that, I approved this ordinance, but I'm sorry, your child's on a wheelchair for the rest of their life.
You weren't driving the golf cart, there's still that personal responsibility.
And I get that, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Be responsible.
I'm just saying that's kind of where my crux of it is. Where I'm more leaning towards is if you have a homeowners association, you're allowing them in there, which is different. Because like my subdivision, where I'm at, we don't have a homeowners association. So we have a lot less ability to regulate internally within our own area. And we already have issues with trying to regulate people doing other things, in my subdivision, they're already doing silly things. So that's why I'm reluctant on it. It's safety drives that too. I'll probably be posing even more technical questions to you on it. I'm sorry, Chief Ensign.
Can you repeat what those survey results were? Didn't you say one was substantially 4, right?
Right.
So there was one that was,
The original, from the original survey?
well, both 1 through 2, you said?
Well, so the original survey that was sent on Facebook after the July 7th,
Right?
there were 774 people who responded. 74% who took the survey agreed golf carts should be allowed. 64% believed that they should be licensed drivers. And 48% believed the cart should be insured. And then with the comments and emails after the draft was posted, and I just did this.
Yeah.
I'm just counting stuff. So it was basically 6 support and 7 didn't.
Okay, so I mean, I think the interesting thing to note is in the original one where there was a lot of conversation about it, 74% said yes, and I think kind of our responsibility up here is to do what the people want. And I understand the 6 to 7, that's a very small sample, but I mean, it's good to know, but I think at the end of the day, our job is just to do, and I definitely say be wary of, the safety aspect and all of that, and I think we put ordinance or rules in here within this ordinance that say, there's certain restrictions, but I would hate to be like, I don't know, 3/4 of the city wants it, we're gonna say no because we're worried about an accident that could possibly happen just on a bike or in a car or anything else that's legal, so just something to keep in mind, for this conversation, I guess.
And I guess one thing, Chief, is Mr. Lee brought up the thing of homeowners associations. My understanding, we don't have control over our streets.
Right.
So we could not say we're gonna make them legal in our area.
Right, that's what would be my interpretation as well.
Okay.
Not right now.
Not right
We
now.
could
Do something, I
to
guess,
say,
say turn it over to the homeowners
turn it over
association.
to homeowners
Yeah.
association.
That would be almost, we'd be careful about private streets then.
Right,
Yeah.
Private streets are a whole nother dimension.
yes, good word.
Yeah,
But to go back to what you were talking about, 74%, I mean, that's very easy for a small group to get online and voice their
Right.
opinion
And skew the results.
and skew the results.
I think
We've seen that also-
774
We've seen that
is
before.
good.
Yep.
I don't know, a good
But I've seen
base.
that before where we did that and we got it skewed and then all of a sudden we had an enormous amount of people show up and come the other way, so.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's wrong, I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying, in my 15 years, I've seen us get it right and I've seen us get it wrong. So that's why I'm a little bit reluctant and.
But these meetings are certainly public and I don't, one person spoke on it, so that's frustrating.
That's why I
we don't
walk,
have more support.
that's kind of why I walk around my neighborhood and talk to the people.
Yeah, me too. And the constituents I've talked to, it's been overwhelming, yes. So that's my
in
sample,
my neighborhood, I think we have an overwhelming yes.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
It just depends on where
Yeah.
you live and.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
whether
You
you're
got-
having issues.
You've got bigger fish to fry in your neighborhood than what I have, it sounds like. with-
Oh, yeah, we have other things.
Yeah.
But we all do. That's
Yep.
just how it is, so.
So I think ours is mine is just one thing, a limit highway crossing.
I think we're all in agreement with that for the most part.
Everything else looked pretty good on here, the changes you made.
Yeah, and the more I just thought about, like, I don't know if the fee is something I really want.
And that's something I threw out to make sure if we're gonna have to spend money on signs, I'd rather see the people that want the golf carts, they get to pay for the signs.
Yeah.
Like Mr. Eckert said, I mean, I just don't think you're gonna collect the revenue to compensate
Right.
for it.
Yeah.
Just do what you need to do to make it right.
Yeah,
And let's encourage you to do good behavior other ways,
yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
Yep.
Here's where I'm at with it. Even if I don't support voting for it, I'm gonna support us doing the right thing when we actually do it.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can always revisit it too.
So.
Yeah, change it, yeah, we can make changes.
Whether or not I end up supporting it or not, I'm gonna support us, making sure we do it right and can provide.
I concur.
So,
Anything else on that? I think we're good for now on that one.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, the next thing is reports and announcements. Ms. Landis, the survey showed that, customer service does very well in the city, so that's a neat thing to see. And the police department people are very happy with that service, so that's kinda nice to see. The other thing I have is on the discussion of businesses not being, having some weed issues on those. Maybe we can pass that on to Mr. Hendershot. I'm thinking he's coming back Monday. So your Monday meeting, maybe you can touch base, and I'll give him a call too. If you can think about it, just mention it to him, so we can decide what we need to do. That's all I have. Mr. Lee?
Nope, I just, in case anybody needs to contact me, I'll be out most of next week, traveling down to Louisiana and Texas for, stuff down there from, what they had happened with the hurricane, so, I was pleased to see a lot of the good results, in the survey. Pleased to see that our first responders are still up there and have been up there for years. I think one of the things that we always get hit on is trails and parks, but the problem we run into is the funding for it. And I think what we need to make sure we're communicating back to our constituents is, how we're running into, it's a funding issue. Unless you're willing to increase what you're paying on your mill levy. So that's the problem we're running into, and has been, so. Believe me, I live in a house where my wife is harping on parks and trails all the time. So, anyhow.
Mr. Eckert?
Mr. Leeton, I would like a word with you after the meeting, if at all possible. And, otherwise, I have nothing. Go Chiefs.
Mr. Graves? Okay. Make a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Staff.
Oh, I guess I have to listen to you too. Okay,
I supported you on Skip.
thank you. Ms. Landis, sorry.
Thank you. Just briefly, I wanted to go back and revisit that report that was put together by Mr. Hendershot and staff, where they went through the city and looked for violations. That is on our website.
Okay.
It's under the planning department. On the main page, you can go to the planning department, and then the code enforcement tab, and that report is there.
All right.
We will follow up on the other questions that were raised.
Okay.
And then also, I just wanted to share credit for the customer service part of the city and the ratings there. Really, all departments provide customer service, with the bulk of the customer service staff being under Mrs. Garrity, under the community services department. So I just want to make sure that everyone's aware that is managed in that department.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Garrity?
No report.
Have you done a report yet?
Sure.
Okay. Chief Henson?
Councilman Eckert.
I have it written down.
Nothing? Sorry, somebody was talking. Mr. Jenkins, all right. I guess, okay, now can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We stand adjourned.
Mr. Leeton. Have you seen this? Can you see if I can